Okay, today we pick up with the American people today and what they are going through and who they are exactly. We need to know how many people live in the U.S. Why do we need to know that? Well, the big thing is that we need to know how best to serve our people and what they need and what that population looks like. So, the U.S. government set up a census, and the census is an organization that takes an official count of the number of people living in the U.S., and they do that every 10 years. So we just had one in 2010, and so that census, its purpose is to tell us the size of each state's population, and then it also tells us about the U.S. and our population of people, like how many children people are having, and migration patterns, where are people living, and how much money are they making on average. So there's a lot of different things that the census tells us and is able to tell us. The first reason why that is that we need to be able to know how many people are in each state's population in order for representation. So that's part of it as well, that we need to know how our government, or what our government should look like and how it should be organized. So that's a big part of it. Anyway, like I said, the census also tells us a lot of other things about the American population. It tells us about population growth. And there are three ways that our population can grow. The first is naturally, and naturally just means that we're having more babies than people are dying. So as our birth rate increases and our death rate decreases, we are gaining population. Things are going very well. The second is adding territory. So anytime that we add a new state or we purchase territory, so we can do that through war. We can buy territory, we can add a state, we can annex territory, and we haven't done any of that recently, but every time we added a state or added territory, we gained population. The third way is through immigration, and we talked a lot about immigration in the last video. So the more people that we bring in through immigration, the more our population grows. So, and like I said, we talked about a lot in the last video. Today, our population growth is down, and that's mostly because people are having smaller families. 50 years ago, people were having 8 to 12 kids in a family or more, and today people maybe are having 1 or 2. So that's a big difference, and that is going to take a toll on our population growth. Another thing that the census tells us, that the census tells us is where Americans live. And in the first census that was taken in 1790, it told us that the most of Americans lived in farms or villages. A lot of them lived in rural areas, and a rural area is a region of farms and small towns. Not a whole lot lived in urban areas, and urban areas are cities. And lately we've been seeing a growth in suburbs, and suburbs are areas that surround the city. So they're like they're called bedroom communities because people just live there. They don't actually work in those communities. They work in the city, but they live in the suburb. Today, about 3/4 of the U.S. population live in metropolitan areas. And metropolitan areas are areas of cities and suburbs that kind of blend together. And so 75% or 3/4 of Americans live in metropolitan areas today, which is a huge change. It's a big shift from 1790, where a vast majority of people lived out in rural areas and in farming communities. So the census also tells us about population shift, that people are moving to different areas of the country. It's called migration. Migration is a large movement of people from one region to another region. And the most recent that we have seen, according to the census, is that they're moving from the Midwest and the Northeast, so the Atlantic states, and they're moving to the South and the West. And this region is called the Sun Belt because it's got nicer climate, it's warmer, there's a lot of jobs and opportunities that are available there, so that's why they're moving. They don't want to put up with, like Iowa winters or the harsh conditions of a winter weather. They go down to the south where they don't have to deal with the extreme temperature change. Another thing that the census tells us is about our diversity in our population, and our diversity has been changing a lot. When we look at our population demographics in terms of diversity, there's a lot of different minority groups. You have Hispanics, which have just recently in the 2010 census, they just recently became the largest minority group in the United States at 16%. And they just overtook the African American minority group, which is currently at 12.9%. And then you have the Asian Americans, who come in at number 3 at 4.6%. Now, they are also the fastest growing group in terms of their numbers have been increasing faster than everybody else's. Also, the census tells us about our family size. We kind of addressed that a little bit earlier about population growth, but the census tells us that Americans are having fewer children. More people are choosing to live alone or to not get married or just not having children. There's an increase in one-parent families, and a lot of that's due to divorce and death and that kind of thing, where they just choose to raise their family on their own. We also see the changing roles of women for the most part. More women, even today, are entering the workforce than ever before. And a lot of that has to do with economic difficulty, just because in order to make it in the world today, you need to have 2 incomes to help out, especially if you have kids. That's the big thing. If you have kids, you definitely need to have that second adult with a job that can help pay for those things. Another thing that the census tells us about is our aging America, that we have a portion of the population that is getting older. Americans are living longer than normal, than they ever have before. The average life expectancy for you guys out there is about 76 years. So we're living way longer than we ever have before. For women, you have an average life expectancy of 79 years. So overall, we're doing pretty well at extending our longevity, that we are able to live longer, healthier longer too. That helps. And a larger number of people are retired than ever before. I know you probably have heard the term the baby boomers, and the baby boomers were people who were born in the 1950s, and so they are finally getting to that retirement age, and now they got to find things to do with their retirement, because they know if you retire at 56 or 57, you've got another 20 years to do stuff. So people have to plan for that retirement, and so those are issues that are going to be coming up in government and be coming up with politicians, which we'll be seeing in future chapters.